The preseason for the Bulls is in the books. They finished 1-4 on the preseason. Not great, although it's always good to say it's just a preseason, but despite it only being the preseason, some of the key guys missing games and obviously not getting the kind of minutes that they would normally see in the regular season, but at the same time, there is also a lot you can glean from how a team is showing up in the preseason, how they're meshing together, how their overall system on offense is working, and while I do think there have been some positives from what we've seen thus far, which we've talked about in some of the prior videos, namely their overall flow on offense, playing much better with pace, speed and transition, better ball movement, and overall the guys are getting much better shots up, or at least taking better shots than they were last season. But at the same time, there are also some concerns that were a repeat of last season. Still not taking enough threes. At times, guys are just getting lost on offense. There is still a lot of standing around at times. Guys aren't attacking enough to get to the free throw line, which is something Billy Donovan talked a lot about this offseason. But I'm not going to try to get overly worried and overreact until we start to see how things transpire in the regular season. In any event, though, let's talk about this final preseason game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Also, a big shout out to the sponsor of this video, So Rare, but more on that in a little bit. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I did want to start with Patrick Williams in this one because there's been so much talk, discourse surrounding Pat recently. I mean, really ever since he's been drafted because he was such a high lottery pick, but ever since the media interviewed Billy Donovan after that last game in which he talked about why he pulled Patrick Williams early from the game because he was missing assignments, wasn't closing out and crashing the boards. And then the following day at practice, he talked more about what aggressiveness means to him and how he wants to see Patrick Williams manifest that. And let's be real, Patrick Williams has arguably turned into one of the most polarizing players on this team across Bulls fandom. From those who still believe in him, or even think that he's still a future superstar in the making, to those who have been out on him since last season, calling him a bust. For the record, I am still a Pat believer. I've said that before, even going back to last season. I don't think he's going to be a superstar because at some point, it doesn't matter how young you are. Eventually, you show us who you are as a player, and I don't get that type of ceiling from him based on what we've seen thus far. Not because he doesn't have the talent to do so, I just don't see the mindset and the mental toughness or confidence from him to be able to get there. But the reason I say all of this is because really, I could make an entire video on this topic of Patrick Williams and the discourse around him, but I say all of this because I know there are going to be people ripping Pat apart tonight, especially if you didn't see the game and just looked at the box score. Dude played 31 minutes and went 3 for 12 from the field, 0 for 7 from 3, 0 for 7 for a guy who you need to be a big three-point shooter this season. 10 points, 5 rebounds, which was the most rebounds he's had all preseason, and yet another 4 turnovers. Seems like a terrible game. And while I'm not saying this was an amazing game for Patrick Williams, but what I will say though is Pat knows he's under pressure. He knows the critics are out there. He knows he needs to be more aggressive, and he knows that he needs to show up better in taking on a bigger role on offense. Pat started off the game exactly how you wanted him to play, playing with force, drive, determination. Had that big baseline drive dunk. He then started driving to the basket using his handles and was even finding guys on the open kickout. And while, yeah, Patrick Williams missed a lot of shots, some of those open shots, yeah, he made mistakes, but he was being more aggressive, like we wanted. I said before, I can live with Pat making mistakes. In fact, I wanted him to take on more risk, make more mistakes, learn from those mistakes. I don't care if he misses shots if they're the right shots. And it shows that he's making a concerted effort to be more assertive out there and not be so deferential. And especially given the fact that this was a preseason game, I can live with him taking on more risk, maybe at times doing a little too much in games. I want him to be putting up more threes. Dude shot over 41% from 3 last season. He's not going to go 0 for 7 every night. Those shots will fall eventually. So again, I'm not going to say I'm happy with Pat's performance in this game, but I'm more so explaining why you shouldn't be going off on Pat for this game when he actually did what you wanted him to do. He just couldn't convert on his shots. Before I get into the rest of the video, I wanted to quickly tell you about today's sponsor, So Rare, which I am super excited to tell you guys about their platform, especially considering it is free to join. It is super fun and you get to win prizes, collect digital cards and assets in the form of NFTs. Unlike most fantasy sports apps, they are different in that it's actually a fantasy gaming marketplace. There is no gambling or betting of any kind. The site enables you to play where users own their players forever. Think of it like you're a GM creating your own dynasty and you're competing weekly in fantasy competitions for great prizes. Users are owners or general managers of their team, making trades, buying and selling players, all that good stuff. And unlike other gaming sites or betting platforms, it doesn't cost you anything to play. You can start for free. I've created my own private league where you can compete and play against each other for prizes and offers, so check it out if you're interested. Join my private league. Link is in the description. We got some great people in there, and thanks again to SoRare for sponsoring this video. Now, of course, Zach Lavine didn't play in this one due to illness, and obviously that's going to impact how the Bulls show up as a unit. This was that final preseason game where you were kind of hoping that you would get a true look at the Bulls rotation for this upcoming season, and then Zach sits, same with Drummond, so that's obviously going to be impacted by that. So instead, you get Ayo into the starting lineup, inserted for Zach Lavine, which was a little surprising. They did move DeMar to the 2 and have maybe Torrey Craig come in and play the 3 with the starting unit, but whatever, it's the preseason. But regardless, the starters got more minutes than we've seen them get all preseason long. Starters were decent. I still have to say I love what I'm seeing from Coby White. I mean, it's more than just the overall improved court vision because he's throwing laser passes with precision on a kick out after driving it to the basket, but it's also just his improved body control when getting to the rim, using his agility to get around his defender when putting up a shot. It's just wild to me how drastically better that's gotten for him. He didn't have the most efficient game on this one on offense, but it's just his overall game across the board appears to be so much better, which is great to see. Vucevic had another great, solid game, 21 points, 10 rebounds. They started utilizing him actually a bit more as a passer at the top of the key, as well as the fact that he was also taking threes in this one and knocking them down. DeMar DeRozan hasn't really been playing the best in the preseason as a whole, but what I will say is you can tell he's trying to embrace this role of being more of a playmaker. He's not dominating the ball or trying to get up the bulk of the shots. Now, is that because it's just the preseason and he'll revert back to his usual play style come the regular season? Maybe, but I can see how DeMar knows that he has to play differently if he wants this team to be successful and win. Ayo was actually pretty impressive in this one, coming into the starting lineup, and mainly because he was showing off some range, taking threes, but also driving to the basket. And then Torrey Craig and Jevon Carter, I'm really going to be liking these guys. I know I said that about Torrey Craig before, but I haven't mentioned about Jevon Carter, just because they're absolute dogs on the defensive end. Carter was pestering guys on the perimeter. Torrey Craig was going at it with Rudy Gobert. I mean, Bulls needed these types of players last season. Also, Julian Phillips, man. Julian Phillips is going to be good. People weren't talking about him very much as being an offensive player after getting drafted, and most certainly not a shooter. Dude actually has a nice release and stroke on his shot, and he's also been solid finishing at the rim. Granted, he's playing against other NBA third-string units, but still, it's encouraging to see from your 19-year-old rookie. How about this, though? The Bulls finally shot more than 30 threes in a game. They actually took 36 threes tonight. The problem, though, was they couldn't make them. They went 11 for 36 at 30% shooting from deep. But despite that being disappointing, what is encouraging is the way the Bulls are getting those threes, the manner in which they're generating threes with quality ball movement, more open looks, and taking them more confidently, rather than these super difficult step back contested threes that we saw so much last season. So yes, you'd like to see those threes go down, and hopefully as the season progresses, they'll start hitting those at a higher clip. But the way they're generating threes compared to what we saw last year is a good sign in my opinion. Obviously, there is still a lot of work to do across the board with this team outside of just shooting three-pointers. Like, there are still a lot of things this team needs to address in these final days of practice before the start of the season, and you hope that it's going to get there. Of course, I'll be talking about the games starting next week with post-game videos, so tune into those. Let me know if you guys want to see the live game chats back for the regular season this year. I've got a couple of special guests coming onto the channel next week, so be on the lookout for that as well. And as always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.